Welcome to another exciting edition of the TPMA Talks podcast. This month's presentation is entitled Competitive Intelligence, How to Get It, How to Use It. Introduced by Charles Dimmock and presented by Zena Applebaum from Bennett Jones. Enjoy.
Zena is a manager of intelligence and intranet at Bennett Jones. It's a leading international law firm based in Canada. Zena's primary responsibility includes conducting analysis of markets and competitor performance, practice development, client relationship management, counterintelligence, and marketing. You can ask her all about counterintelligence momentarily. So I'm not going to read the rest, but with that, why don't we get started?
Okay,
Zena, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Oh, and by the way, ask her about her USB. That is really cool.
So, before I get into the formal proceedings, I'm pretty casual about the way I present. Feel free to interject with questions as you have them. I will stop every once in a while and ask if there are questions. I don't know entirely who knows anything about competitive intelligence. Are any of you doing competitive intelligence by quick show of hands? Yes, you're doing some of it. Great. Okay. So we have a baseline. So for some of you, this will maybe be review. For others of you, it'll be new. At any point, like I said, feel free to stop me. A little bit more about my background. I'm actually a marketing person, business development head. Fell into CI and just kind of kept going and have grown the function. So Bennett Jones being a law firm, at my previous firm, I started the function. At Bennett Jones, I started the function. Been there about 9-ish years. Started as a sole provider of CI sitting within the marketing department, and I've grown the CI department to about 4 people, myself plus 3 analysts full time. So we've done well, and hopefully we can give you some tips and tricks along the way of how to incorporate CI into the jobs that you're currently doing. But with that, we'll look at some of those things and what that means. And again, at @AppleCI if you want to tweet, hopefully only nice tweets, but I won't be offended.
Did you say that your firm was a law firm?
Yes.
Oh, Bennett Jones Law Firm.
Yes, Bennett Jones Law Firm. So, quick sort of agenda of what we're going to go through. I'm going to talk about what competitive intelligence is and maybe what it isn't, because that's kind of important too. I'll take a quick snapshot of the intelligence cycle and sort of walk you through the various pieces of that. How to get it, how to use it, which was sort of what Charles had said to me should be covered tonight, so I'm going to cover that. Some deliverables, what those would look like, some analysis frameworks, and so are you thinking about what analysis looks like, and you're probably doing it, you just don't necessarily know that there's fancy language around it. Communication success, which is sort of my baby, and how I think you can move competitive intelligence forward in your jobs. It's sort of really, really important to be able to communicate well. We'll look at how you go from being a firefighter to being a leader, a little note about ethics, and then what's next. And we'll take some questions about that. So what is competitive intelligence? According to SCIP, which is the Strategic and Competitive Intelligence Professionals Association. So it's an association similar to this one, specific to CI professionals. Their definition of competitive intelligence is a systemic and ethical program for gathering, analyzing, and managing external information that can affect you. Okay, so that's really anything. That's pretty broad-based. Competitive intelligence is primarily concerned with anything that will make an organization more competitive and able to avoid surprises from its competition, suppliers, and the like. And that's kind of where a lot of you will come in terms of managing various business lines or product lines or even products within an organization. And CI is forward-looking and requires vigorous collection, analysis, dissemination, and repeat. And that's kind of the cycle, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll come back to skip it a little bit as well. So we're talking tonight about ways in which you can incorporate CI into your existing jobs. But I think it's important to point out that CI as a job exists in the world. In several of your organizations, it may already exist. And maybe you don't know about it. Maybe it sits in a different department that you're unaware of. Maybe it's not reporting in through marketing, it's reporting in through business development, it's reporting in through strategy, potentially sitting in the libraries for any of you that have special or corporate private libraries within your organizations. I don't know if there's pharma people here, or I'm not really sure where everybody's coming from, but in various industries, CI exists as its own tool. That's not to say that you can't also do it, but if you do have it in your organization, or if you don't know if you do, go find out, tap those people, and integrate them. And we'll talk about how you can do that a little bit more. But one of the things I wanted to point out here by putting this job description up, and it's not fake, it's a real job description from a law firm in Texas. A couple of things I wanted to point out here is that the point of the job is efficient mining and development of data, that it reports into BD and reports sometimes to a CI manager, sometimes to a BD manager, sometimes to a strategy director. It all depends. Every organization is different, and where it's going to fit into your organization is going to be different as well. You support market intelligence teams, which is important, and that you work, it's very collaborative. Competitive intelligence is very collaborative, and there's a move more and more towards the term of collaborative intelligence rather than competitive intelligence. And in fact, I'm doing a presentation next month in New York on collaborative intelligence, which is sort of taking CI a step further and integrating BD, marketing, R&D if you have it in your organization, the library and the research departments that are sort of more traditional, market research, all of those things, combining those and working within a framework that incorporates all of those departments to create one competitive intelligence unit. I mean, ultimately, competitive intelligence is about making your organization competitive, making your product line, your business line competitive. So how do we do that? We start with the CI cycle. So at the very beginning, where it's a start, there are decision makers, and those could be anybody. And again, that will depend. It's very specific to your organization, but usually it's the C-suite. And if you don't have a C-suite, it's your directors or your shareholders or whoever it is. And in my case, it would be the partnership board. Are your decision makers? What are their needs? And it's about anticipating their needs and then planning for those needs using a variety of tools: secondary research, primary human intelligence research, and then analyzing those. Many of you are probably doing secondary research, or at least I hope you are, doing secondary research to support your product launches. Yes? Yes? Anybody recognize what I'm talking about? Yes? Yes? We're going to launch a new product. We go to see if it actually exists in the market somewhere. Or maybe you don't do that part, but it's given to you already. So I don't know, how that all works, but presumably you're not going to launch a product without any sense of who needs it, who wants it. Yes? Can I get some?
Growth trends.
Yes,
Odyssey,
okay.
Forrester, yeah, we got all of
Right.
those.
So you're doing a lot of that secondary research. In fact, you're doing a lot of the human intelligence watching too, if anybody is doing focus groups, market research with your actual consumers. Every time you send out a survey attached to a product and it says, did you rank our product? Did you like our product? And you get back intelligence. Actually, what you get back is data, and it's your job to take that data and turn it into intelligence. And you may have business intelligence analysts in your organizations who sort of play with that data. Try to get the raw data from them as well, because ultimately, I would argue, and many in the CI community would agree or spar with me, that is what makes the difference between your organization and another organization, is what your clients, your customers, what human feedback you get back is ultimately the differentiator between you and anybody else. Anybody can go type in product A into Google and get a whole bunch of specs about it. Anybody can walk the halls at a sales meeting for competitor B and pick up things that people leave on the floor. Ethical, unethical, we can talk about that. But anybody can get that kind of paper intelligence or the sort of nefarious intelligence that's out there everywhere thanks to the internet and various other communication means. It's the stuff that we're getting directly from people that's going to make the difference. Once you have all that data, you need to analyze it and organize it in some way. You're going to create reports, and I'll show you how to do a little bit of that as well. You may have the sidebar there of other uses for that information. So something may come out of the data that you've collected where you realize that maybe there's an entirely different vertical market you haven't thought about. Maybe there's an entirely different use for the product that you haven't thought about. And this happens to me a lot with subscription databases, which we'll get into in a minute, where I get a vendor coming to me and saying, here's all the great things you can do with my subscription database. And I'm like, that's great. I don't want it for any of that. I want to do this with it. And they look at me like I have 3 horns. Because, I'm sorry, you want to do what with our product? We built it to do this. That's nice. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. It's like using a car as a boat. But if I can do it and I can make it happen and it's useful to me, then it's good CI. And then you repeat that cycle. So is anyone starting to see where they fit into this, or some of the research that they do? Some of it is probably ad hoc, some of it you're probably doing implicitly in your jobs without explicitly knowing that what you're doing is called competitive intelligence. Yes, no? Maybe? Okay. Hopefully we'll warm up. Hopefully that wasn't my fault. Okay. How are you going to do CI? First way you're going to do CI, or some version of CI, is by knowing your audience and your client. And you have 2 audiences and 2 clients at all times. You have your externally facing clients, those are the consumers of your product, or your services, or your product line, or whatever. And then you have your internal clients, who are the consumers of your daily things that you produce, whether it's the emails you send them or the reports that you give them. And it's important for you to understand your world in that you sit in both of those camps. Whether or not you actually communicate with the end consumer, they are your client. The same way your boss is ultimately your client, and your boss's boss, and your boss's boss's boss, right? They're all both your clients. And so you need to always be aware of what each of their needs are, and not in any great detail. Arguably, you need to know your internal clients better than your external clients, because there's going to be a whole host of people in your organization who know who your external clients are. But you need to know your internal clients, because that's whose needs you ultimately need to satisfy. And it's ultimately a way that you can, using CI is ultimately a way that you can promote yourself as a leader within your organization by taking your job and just adding a little bit to it, adding some value to what your job description on paper is. How many of you know what your organization's strategic plan is? How many of you know where your product / business line / marketing efforts fit into that strategic plan? That is not enough hands. I feel like if you're marketing a product or a service, you should know where it fits in the organization's overall scheme, right? So if you don't know that, or you think I'm crazy, tomorrow, when you go to work, find out what the strategic plan is. Find out where your business line, product line, whatever fits within that paradigm. Because that's really going to help you understand how much effort to put into the background and the CI surrounding your product. Who are your key competitors? Do people know who your key competitors are? Key disruptive competitors? People you wouldn't even think of? Yes, no, maybe? Yeah? Okay. I'm not getting a sense that you are all in agreement here, but okay. Think about, has anybody read Blue Ocean Strategy? It's sort of like, 2009's big.
I did get into that.
Big business book. Yeah. So there is a big blue ocean around your organization. There are competitors that you don't even know are your competitors. If you think about the consumer market, even for something as simple as tablets or smartphones, nobody would have considered Kindle to be a competitor in the Canadian market when Kobo had such a big lock on the market and Kindle couldn't operate in Canada. But then there's this whole black market, everybody trying to figure out how to use your Kindles in Canada. And now, all of a sudden, Kobo is bought by a Japanese company, and Kindle has become like the reigning champion of the tablet or the e-reader market. So don't quote me on that. What you want to do is not only think about who your competitors are, and this is a really easy way to start, not only think about who your competitors are, but think about who else is out there. That might be tangentially related to what you do, even if they're not directly related to what you do, and just keep tabs on them. Keep an idea of who they are, and you can start to create competitor profiles. And we do this all the time. So what we do is we have a line tab of, I'd say so by background, we're the 13th largest-ish law firm in Canada. I say ish because they keep being merged with other law firms, but we're the 13th largest-ish law firm in Canada. And we keep tabs on probably 10 other law firms, as well as a couple of other organizations that we think are important to keep tabs on. And by keeping tabs on them, I mean that we keep a profile of each of them. So who they are, how big they are, what their key markets are, who their key or significant lawyers are, partners, in effect, their C-suite. And we update that quarterly or annually, depending on our needs. And it's just always there to remind you, like, oh, we're doing this, we should be aware of it. Oh, we're doing this, how does what we're doing maybe affect what they're doing? And again, We all have access to the same information. These days, having information doesn't make us unique. There was a time, even 20 years ago, where having information made us unique. Now information's out there. Like, it's in a million different places, and I'm gonna show you in a couple of minutes how to collect some of that. It's the stuff you hear on the street. So when you go to do a sales call, or not you necessarily, but your salespeople go to do a sales call, don't let that information that's in their head go out the door. Go and meet with them. Hey, I understand you spoke to one of our key clients yesterday. They renewed the contract. That's great. Congratulations. I'm sure you all know. I'm sure the salespeople all like to make you all aware of their great big sales. And they don't really talk about the sales they're not getting. But go and talk to them. Debrief them after those sales calls. Try to set up a weekly coffee with a sales manager or with whoever's in your front line. So again, in every organization, it's going to be somebody different. But set up a weekly coffee. Set up a monthly coffee or a quarterly coffee. Spend the $250 and buy somebody a coffee and talk to them. Talk about the product. Talk about the business. You're going to find out two things. You're going to support knowing your audience internally, and you're going to find out what's going on externally. When you build trust and you engender trust within your organization, people will start to come to you because they realize you want to know these things about your products. They're going to come to you and say, hey, I just tried to sell product X to this guy and he didn't want to buy it, even though they've stocked their shelves with it for the last 12 years, because one of his clients told him that product Y is better because of X, Y, and Z. Who knows, right? You would have never known that had that guy not thought to come and tell you that. And you can feed that back into your next report on, the product itself. And then you may want to consider doing an overall industry analysis. So even just being able to say we're the 13th largest law firm in Canada, I, on a regular basis, know where we stand, who our competitors are, what our key markets are, and you should know that about your organizations as well. Even if you only know it about your product line or your business line, you should think about your product line and business line in the context of your overall organization. So knowing your audience, knowing your client, even if you just do that and start thinking this way tomorrow, you'll be way better at your jobs. And being way better at your jobs will put you in a much better position to be in a leadership role within the organization. If you can master this, never mind all the rest of the stuff we're going to talk about, if you can master this, you're going to have a really good grasp on your product, and you're going to be able to market it that much better, both internally and externally. Yeah.
So, my background, I'm in sales.
Okay.
And it's in small companies. But hey, I was in a marketing management position 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I made the mistake of getting too much information about all this and then not being able to pull out the important parts and stuff, right? How do you go about doing that? I mean, with 4 people, I'm sure.
So what?
But
It has to pass the so what test.
okay.
So,
Okay.
so what? So what that I know that consumer Y doesn't buy the product? Does it ultimately affect our bottom line? No. If I start to see a trend where 15 people tell me, or 15, I have a salesman come back to me 15 times and say, we're hearing the same message, or I have 15 salesmen across the country come back and say, okay, now it's a trend.
Okay.
Now I need to pay attention to it. But you're gonna lose some sales, right? That's the natural evolution of business. You're gonna lose some sales. Some clients you don't want to have anymore as clients, right? Some companies are just not fun to deal with. So it's okay to lose them.
Yeah.
Some information is really nice to know, but who cares?
Okay.
So what, and what can I do with this? So people will often say to me, and I'll present to my competitor law firms, and people will be like, oh, how can you do that? You're giving away secrets. No, I'm not. If my strategy is not the same as their strategy, and it never is, even Coke and Pepsi, they ultimately want to sell beverages, but it goes way deeper than that, right? Your strategy is never going to be the same. The people running the organizations is never going to be the same. Your board of directors is going to be different. Your shareholders are going to be different. So the makeup in which each organization is built is really going to lend to what you do with that information. So for my organization at this moment in time, so what?
Okay.
What can I do with this information? Is it actionable? Is it decision ready? Can I go back to my decision makers and say, here's something that came out of a conversation yesterday, here's what you need to do with it.
Yeah, okay.
And if the answer is no, then file it away for future reference. And we can talk about where to do that, how to do that, but file it away for future reference. So, where do you find competitive intelligence? Everywhere is the short answer. Probably not so helpful, but it's true. So I'm always working. There's basically two different categories, as we kind of talked about back here. There's your secondary research and your human intelligence, or your primary research in the CI parlance. Proprietary information is, we'll talk first about databases. There's 1,006,000 databases out there. A lot of them are very industry specific, so you may or may not have access to different databases that, there's a food service database, so if you're in the food services business, there will be a database that'll just have news relating to that sector. There's, in pharmaceuticals, there's 1 million different databases that are, some are very scientific, some are about patent research, there's all kinds of different databases out there. Get to know the people in your organizations who are subscribed to these databases, who use them, and either beg for a license, offer to pay for your own license, or become really good friends with them that they'll do your research for you. It's always the easiest way to do it. It's that coffee you pay for every week. Even things like public filings databases, so CDAR, which is not a subscription-based one. Anybody has access to CDAR. Start to learn how to mine data in CDAR. So start to learn how to mine annual reports of your competitors. If they're public companies. If they're private companies, of course, they're not filing, but they're still issuing press releases. Canada Newswire will have a database of all those press releases, and you can go onto the Canada Newswire website, and you can set up an alert on anybody you want, and it will send you an email every time a press release gets announced by that organization or those organizations. So as part of my weekly, monthly, quarterly monitoring, I have Newswire announcements for every other law firm in Canada, and a couple of others sprinkled through that are of interest to me, that may or may not put something across the Canada Newswire. It may seem like, oh my God, I'm gonna get bombarded. You won't. But those are some of the databases that are out there. And again, talk to the people in R&D in your organizations, talk to the people in your libraries if you have them, talk to the people in knowledge management if you have those departments, shared services if you have those kinds of departments. They know what these databases are. Do some research on your own, find out what exists that supports your industry.
Is there a subscription fee to the Canada Newswire?
No.
Okay.
No, there is a fee to put a press release out, as some of you might know, and it's about between $7 and $9, but you wouldn't be issuing a press release, your marketing department would do that, or your PR department. Yeah.
You said that you won't be bombarded by this? Like,
Right.
Is that because people use it less these days? Or?
So there's a couple of reasons why. One, you think like, oh my God, I'm gonna get every press release. People don't issue, first of all, because it costs $700 or $900 to issue a press release, people don't issue press releases on everything. They post them on their websites. And because they're posted on their website does not make it an official press release. An actual press release goes to the press. And that's that $900 fee that you're spending, or $700, or it might even be more expensive these days. I haven't been here in a while. So you won't get as bombarded as you think you will, but you can also set up things like, there's an organization called Track Engine, which you would pay for, that will track the websites of your competitors. You can use Google Alerts to do it as well, but Google Alerts is not as reliable, and you'll get a lot of weird, that's when you'll get bombarded. You'll get a lot of weird things. So for a while at my former firm, we were tracking an old Canadian retailer, Canadian Tire. And so you can imagine on a daily basis, I would commit to like a stack of news related to Canadian Tire, 98% of which was what was on sale that day, from all the different publications. So that was a fun morning, and that was every morning. So there are services out there that can eliminate a lot of that for you. So Track Engine is great because what it does is it will highlight the terms that you wanted to track on every website. So if you're looking for a particular product, or you're looking for a particular SKU or something related to a product, that's what you can do it. And then there's publicly available information such as We talked about filing. So if your competitors are public companies, or even they're a subsidiary of a public company, track everything they put in. Everything they put in, because you never know where embedded in there's going to be something that's useful to them. I'm not saying you have to read everything every day, but set aside an hour on a Friday afternoon from 3 to 4 or whatever to read through the filings that week related to your competitors and keep those profiles up to date. And you can just kind of set aside some time every week or every month even, quarterly, wherever you have the time. Any little bit of information you know will help you do your job better. And then there's human intelligence. So we talked a little bit about using your salespeople, vendors, suppliers, corrugated cardboard boxes that you're shipping stuff in. There's not that many corrugated cardboard box manufacturers out there, so chances are you and your competitors are using the same people or know the same people. Talk to them. It doesn't have to be unethical. Hey, I understand you're also working with these guys. Are they doing anything new? They can choose to not answer you, but if they do answer you, nobody's breaking any laws. It sounds callous, but the truth of the matter is that you're just two people talking. Again, how you use that information is what's going to be important. If you want more on that, we can talk about elicitation methods and things like that, but we're not going to get at that yet.
Yeah, I just want to say something about the newswire. Actually, I think Canadian newswire or CNW,
Yeah.
probably have like 40% of the Canadian public companies. If you want the whole information, you should also look for like Marketwire
Yeah.
and probably PR Newswire and the Newswire. There's like 4 Newswire, which is like recognized by SEC and the Canadian
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, I think only CNW will give you probably 40% of the
Canadian companies.
information.
That's a great thing to know. And there's 3 other databases that were just mentioned as well. So PR Newswire, Marketwire,
and NASDAQ, they have what's the name, the Beanswire and
there are also
Thompson. Yeah.
Thomson
Yeah, I
Reuters
think
Newswire.
it's better off just pay for Factiva or LexisNexis, which because all the newswire have agreement with major databases like
Right.
Factiva or LexisNexis, so you can just put the ticker or the company information. So it doesn't matter which newswire this company use, they're gonna put
Right.
it where it's appreciated.
If you want to pay for Factiva or Lexis, which are not cheap. So those are options as well. Other things you can do is pay for services like DisclosureNet, which will take all of the filings, put them in one place. They often get the filings before CDAR. They have like a 24-hour lag before CDAR. And we can, I'm available for questions later if we want to talk about specific sources to do specific things. Obviously, I don't know everything that's out there, but I can point in the direction of some of the things. I don't want to get bogged down in sources because there's a myriad of them, but there's more important things than just what's out there. Newspapers and social media, we'll talk about social media as well in a minute. So, where CI can add value to product marketing. And I'm going to unpack each one of these things separately. So we talked about where you can find it, and then once you find it, where you can slot it in to add some value, okay? So intelligence can support product marketing through current awareness monitoring. So that's kind of what we've been talking about. So keeping on top of your competitors, but also keeping on top of yourself in your marketplace, and that's the counterintelligence thing we talked about. It's always a great activity to go and look at all of your competitors' websites and take a single product line and just compare like what they put online about it, how much information is there, and then do the same with your own organization and say like, maybe we're telling the world too much about our product and our ability to be like, hey, look at us, we're amazing, we sell the best shoes in the world. But maybe we're telling our competitors way too much about our shoes because they're handcrafted like this. You know, maybe you don't want to put that on your website. Maybe you just want to say they're handcrafted and stop there. Same thing with your marketing collateral related to that product line as well. So current awareness monitoring is one of those places to do that. RFP responses. How many of you are involved in RFP responses for your organizations? Awesome. Request for proposals, whether it's as a company, organization as a whole, or it's an individual product line. That's the thing that is going to make. We have the pen that is going to solve everybody's conference dilemma, and we're going to sell our pens to your conference. Find out who else is bidding, and if you don't know, think about it logically. Who else is likely to have been given this proposal? Who is the incumbent? What is our chance of winning? Do a little bit of analysis with your RFP team before you actually go to reply, because you may find that maybe we shouldn't be replying. Maybe we are not going to win this bid. And so maybe we are going to reply because you never know unless you reply, but we're not going to put a ton of effort in it and work around the clock because the likelihood of winning it is slim. That can also backfire because the incumbent misses the deadline and or sends in a non-compliant response. But these are chances you have to take like everything else, and sometimes spending 200, 300, 400 hours on an RFP response that ultimately you have no chance in hell of winning. It's not really great time spent. So those are some things you can do before you actually respond to an RFP. And then you can also frame your response in such a way where you incorporate this information into it without explicitly saying, I know my competitor is going to tell you that their pen is better than mine, but here's why mine is better. You can start to frame your answers in such a way where you use really concise language to say, our pen does this, not this, or whatever, in a way to promote your pen as different from your competitors, knowing who else might be replying to that. Early warning systems. So this is a big CI thing. You'll read about this a lot in the CI community, and there are third-party organizations that can help you set these up. Or you can do it yourself as part of your current awareness monitoring, where you set up a system that says, I'm going to monitor every time my publicly traded competitor announces that they've retained outside counsel for something. So they've retained M&A advisory counsel. So M&A advisory counsel means they want to be bought or sold. Or they're in a position where they want to buy or sell. Or they're in a position where their cash balance is too high, whatever. They've retained legal counsel. Why have they retained legal counsel? They have legal trouble, or they're looking to buy or sell. Right? Same thing with financial counsel. You may want to look at who their auditors are and keep tabs on those kinds of things. Again, it depends on how deep you want to get. These are all options that are out there for you. Appointment notices. Everybody likes to brag about, oh, we've hired this new great CEO, or we've hired this new great head of sales, or this director of marketing. You flip to the end of Marketing Magazine and there's all like appointment notices. What does that tell you about the organization? What does that tell you about the direction they may or may not be going in? Maybe they're going to scale down their social media efforts and focus more on bricks and mortar product marketing. Okay, so if I'm Indigo and all of a sudden everybody's selling books online and there's no money in that anymore, what am I going to offer in my stores? And you'll notice there's a whole new slew of things happening in Indigo stores now, right? As a response to the market. So those appointment notices may help you suss out some of that, and the same thing with recruiting efforts. So they're hiring new roles. So all of a sudden you're going to start to see CI jobs pop up, because now that you're thinking about CI, you're going to start to see them. What does that say about my competitors if they're hiring CI people? It means they're getting more competitive. It means they're concerned about their position in the market. If they're hiring more marketing people, if they're hiring social media people, maybe they're going for a younger target audience, or maybe they're looking to do more brochureware. So you don't want to jump to any conclusions, but when you start to put all of these data pieces together, you can start to build an analysis about your competitor, or again, you don't have to do it with the whole competitor. You can just do it on a product line basis, whatever makes sense to you. Social media monitoring and feeding human intelligence. The important thing here is to keep this all up to date. Anything that happened a month ago, depending on your industry, might be out of date. And only you will know better. You know your audience and your clients better than I do, certainly. You will know how quickly and how often you need to keep this information up to date. So if you go into a meeting and you say, well, I heard last month that blah, 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 and they all look at you like, that's great, that was last month, who cares? But it may be that you heard something last month and it's going to be important for 6 more months. So, current awareness monitoring, we talked a little bit about how to do this in terms of Canada Newswire, in terms of media monitoring services like Bowden's, or there's a bunch of them out there. Talk to your PR people. Talk to your PR people about where they're sending your company's press or your marketing material, and then use those organizations to feed back in the information you need. Or you can do it with a customized portal. You can be sending out newsletters and alerts from the data. A lot of the subscription databases have a great feature where they will alert you every time there's a new filing or there's a new newsletter item. So you don't actually have to do any work. You just find the database and then set up the alert. That kind of takes a little bit of time. Even if you have Lexis or Factiva, you can do the same thing. And it will send you an alert every time your competitor puts out a new product or every time your competitor is in the news. And these things are getting more and more sophisticated too. And then filings monitors as well. Key developments, we've talked about those a little bit, so we won't get into those, but those are sort of early warning indicators. They're an indicator that something is going to happen. It may be 6 months out, but something might happen. And again, just plot it somewhere on a map or on a timeline and forget about it. RFP responses, we talked about this. So win-loss analysis, you want to do a SWOT or timeline analysis. What's important here is that responding to an RFP with some sort of background is what's going to elevate you from being a product manager to being a leader within your organization, because you're starting to think strategically about the organization beyond just, oh my God, we got this RFP and they want pens and we need to give them pens for their conference and we have the best pens. Let's write the response. Okay, like slow down, take 30 seconds, take a minute, think about how your pens are better, why your pens are better, and who else might be sending an RFP response. Social media monitor. So there are a lot of tweeters in the room.
Mhm.
Yes, I see like 3. Okay. Quora. Anybody heard of Quora? SlideShare. Quora, SlideShare, great places to mine data. So Quora, for those of you that don't know, is like a big, giant online Q&A. So somebody will post a question and say, what do you think is the best pen on the market? I'm stuck on pens today. What do you think is the best pen in the market? And somebody will respond and say, I'm a pen salesman, and I think Bic pens are the best pens on the market. And somebody else will respond and say, no, I'm a professor. I spent all day writing, which is such an anachronism. But anyway, I spent all day writing, and I think this pen is the best pen. And then the viewers of those answers can rate those answers and bump them up or down based on the reviewer's response. So generally the sales guy will get bumped to the bottom because he's just trying to sell more of his own pens. But the professor who uses the pen on a regular basis can get bumped up. So it's a good way for you to go out and do primary research, to post a question on Quora about your product. And if you don't want to do it because that's too obvious, get somebody else in your organization to do it. Get a client that you know loves your product. Ask them, hey, would you mind posting a question on Quora for me? Again, gray ethical issue? Maybe not, but you're not asking them to like steal for you. Yes?
Yeah, is it kind of seen as a little bit, brash or brass to be the product manager or the marketing manager and posting on Quora saying, hey, what do you think of my product?
Maybe. But again, and we'll
I
get to
just
that when
don't
we
know.
talk about
That's
ethics. I mean, look, you do that all the time anyway, right? Like you're at a dinner party with friends and people are like, hey, you work for BlackBerry. What do you think of the new Q10? Are you not going to answer the question? Say 10.
Have you actually seen, actually that's a great place to mine your competitive intel if you see your competitor doing that.
Yeah.
Kind of watch their answers.
Watch their answers, or you don't have to be as obtuse about it if you don't want to. The point is that you can be, and you just may not get any answers. The likelihood of somebody seeing your question and being like, I am not doing business with ADP anymore because they posted a question on Quora. Don't do anything your organization wouldn't be happy with you doing it. Well, when I talk about ethics, we'll talk about the front page news scenario. But, it's just information. It's just out there. Use the tools. You would tweet about a new product and nobody would think that's weird. Have you tried the new pen? I don't know what's with the pens tonight. So in addition to posting on social media, you want to mine the social media. So use tools like Hootsuite. You can use tools, you can use an Excel spreadsheet. Like, you don't have to be fancy about this stuff. I use a lot of Excel spreadsheets. And I sort and I make tables, and it's great because it's fast and it's easy and reliable, and I can do it anywhere. Monitor for tone, content frequency, and this is how you're going to start to see your trends. Right? We talked about trending a little bit. So one sales guy coming back and telling you something is not a big deal, but if you start to see a trend, or you start to notice sentiment changes, significant changes in sentiment, maybe around an event. So maybe there's a time of year where people are really using a particular product, but later in the year they're not using it. You may notice that trend in social media. You may notice it's a great way to get at your clients and your external audience really, really easily. It's also a great way to do some counterintelligence and make sure that your own marketing people, the way they're tweeting, or your social media people if you have them, the way they're tweeting, what they're tweeting, what they're posting on LinkedIn, or what they're posting in SlideShare. Really, really important what people are posting on SlideShare. Don't want your sales presentations posted on SlideShare. Lots of people think, oh, you can't make the meeting, we'll just post it on SlideShare. No, don't do that. I mean, do it. It's great for your competitors to find information on you. But counterintelligence, don't do it. Don't allow any product stuff to get posted on SlideShare. Ever. Make it a rule. And then take all of this big data that's floating out there and turn it into a so what. Turn it into a story. You can do this in-house. Like I said, I'm a big DIY person, so I do a lot of stuff in Excel, much to my team's chagrin. But we also have third-party software that we use. And again, at the end of the presentation, I'm happy to talk about what some of those third-party software looks like, and different organizations that are out there that can help you do this kind of stuff. So what those platforms will do, third-party ones, they'll bring all of that data in, and they can do one or two things with it. They can bring it all in and just leave it there. They can bring it all in and create newsletters. So you can bring it all in and create a newsletter every week that says, here's everything to do with pens this week. And you'll get back a report that has all the tweets related to it, any news articles related to it, any public filings related to whatever parameters you've set up, you can get a newsletter sent out to you. And then you can also make that newsletter into a fancy template and brand it and make it your own. But that might be like light years down the road for many of you. Or if you move into CI as a full-time job. Again, the newsletter and the data points in and of themselves are not enough. You need to be able to do something actionable with that or make something decision ready. Okay, so compiling a series of newsletters on an ongoing basis about your competitors doesn't do anything for anybody. Put it through the so what test. Building internal networks, we talked about a little bit. Information ubiquity, human intelligence sets our organizations apart. Libraries, marketing managers, whoever's in charge of the information, you can use this, you can be the central hub for that information. So you can set yourself up as a library for all things related to pens or all things related to my product and make sure that everybody sends all that to you. And you'll see in some of the really big organizations will actually set up contests, they'll set up hotlines, they'll set up internal email boxes through their intranets that say, if you have a hot tip about competitor X, Y, and Z, send it through the portal or send it to this email address, and somebody on the other end will collect all of that information. I know organizations like some of the donut companies in the States will actually send people to different stores to see what's happening in the stores and take video and send it back.
Donut video.
Yeah, well, what's the new flavor, right? Things like, well, there's a great story, you want to talk donuts, and you'll understand why I'm talking about donuts in a minute, but there's a great story of Jason Priestley tweeting about I'm going to totally get this wrong because I'm going off memory, but he tweeted about a Canadian jelly donut that he wanted to see, and then the next day Tim Hortons made it happen and delivered one to him, and then it became a thing. So that's the power of social media, and there's a disruptive thing where some star says, oh, let's do this. If nobody at Tim Hortons had noticed it, nothing would have happened. But here's a great way to jump on your competition simply by monitoring it. Or better yet, had it not been Tim Hortons who jumped on it, but Donut Maker X jumped on it instead.
I think it was a tidbit in a donut.
Was it? Yeah, it was some.
Priestley, yeah.
Yeah, the Priestley.
Tidbit in a
Yeah.
donut. That's right.
So, sorry about that library-specific slide. That was for a different presentation, but the content is the same. Where are you going to get this information within your organization? So we've talked about, talking to R&D, CAM if it exists, so knowledge management, shared services, if anybody's in the professional services, market research departments, you probably all have, and if you don't have market research departments, you may use outsourced firms that do your market research for you, that set up your focus groups for you. Talk to them. Who did you get in this week? You know, what was the profile of those people? Were they positive, negative, maybe things that aren't in their official report? Because it just didn't fit into the framework of whatever report they were doing. Talk to your accounting people, CRM and other databases that you may have internally. So when you have a firm event or a company event, who are you inviting? And how can you tap into those people? If you have a journalist who's covering your events all the time and coming to your company's product launches all the time, what other product launches are they going to? What else are they seeing? Right? Journalists are supposed to be objective. They often aren't. So they will more than happily probably tell you what else is happening in the market and postulate for you. Subscription databases we talked about. And then we're going to talk a little bit about analysis and how you put all these data points together. Am I jumping around too much, everybody, or are we everybody good? Okay, I have no idea what the time is. I gotta stop soon, sorry. Okay. So basically you need to do analysis on this data. Put all your data together and do analysis. It needs to pass the SOAP test. And analysis requires two parts. It requires insightful findings and a product. You have to do something with those insightful findings. So it's not just nice to be like, wow, that's really interesting, I'm going to take note of that. Take note of that, spit it out into a report, into an email, into something, and give it to whoever it is that makes those decisions if we go back to our intelligence cycle. You may hear, if any of you are not MBAs or not finance types, you may hear analysis frameworks talked about in the context of CI or even in the context of financial analysis. Don't be afraid of it, it's just a framework. It's a context. It's a way of taking data and organizing it to make sense. It's like a pivot table. It's like a grid that you would have done in kindergarten. Like, we've all done these things, we just don't know that what we're doing has a name. So don't be afraid of analysis. And I'm going to show you a timeline analysis. Anyone know what a timeline analysis is? Also referred to occasionally as a historiographic analysis. So it's basically what has happened before may dictate what will happen again. So you take a whole bunch of events that you're going to get from publicly available information, you're going to plot them on a timeline, you're going to look for trends, and then you're going to guess what's going to happen next based on what's happened before. So that's what a template looks like. So if I am the person in charge of the green or socially conscious or environmentally friendly initiatives for Dunkin' Donuts, I may want to look at what McCafe is doing, and I may want to look at what Starbucks is doing. I arguably would want to look at what Tim Hortons is doing as well. So I took all my big giant data and I made this chart. I took 10 years worth of news releases and media and press, and these days I would have added in Twitter streams and everything else and put it up into a nice timeline. So that's what it would look like. So a fruit and yogurt parfait introduced in 2000 at McDonald's was like a move towards being healthy. Even though it's sugar related and really not so healthy, but it looks like it's healthy. And then I'm going to circle the things that are of particular import to me. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, this was done by the guy who was the head of CI who was the head of CI at Dunkin'. So that's why the events that are circled are relevant to me. But it's to show you what to do with all that data. And you can do this with your own products or your own services that you're providing.
Did this help them determine what their next move was?
Yes.
Or at least, I guess what it does is it tells me what the trend is.
It tells you what the trend is. And this is the kind of thing you can, I mean, it takes some time front-ending it to set it up, but then every time something new happens, you just plop it on. And you can take your week's worth of data and look for the one thing. And if you have the joy of a team to work with, each of you can be responsible for something different and plot on a different timeline. So they actually did these for a whole bunch of different initiatives. So there was like a donut one, there was a coffee one, there's a green and socially conscious one.
Yeah. Well, for me, I see two, like you could come back later with a different question. Like once you have it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the
there.
whole point, right? Is that the cycle continues because you're gonna ask new questions, and there's that sidebar in the CI cycle where you're like, okay, what else came out of this, which we didn't expect to come out of it? By just plotting the information on a grid like this. And there's different grids you can do, right? But this is just one of them, so this is the timeline analysis. If anyone's looking for analysis tools, I recommend Analysis Without Paralysis by Craig Fleischer.
Are there 3D visualizations?
No, it's a book, so there's no 3D visualizations of that there. There are more and more CI companies are coming out with visualization technology. There are different things you can do, build it out. You know, you could take this and then take the marketing, I mean, in this room, I would take all of this stuff and then take the marketing of all of this stuff and lay over the marketing of each of these initiatives and see what you come out with. My inner geek is coming out.
That's okay. Around the table, when this is presented, let's say once a month,
Yeah.
CI update once a quarter. What are the conversations between the different, in this case, partners in your company, or heads of the company, representing different departments? What conversations go on as they
So,
have this information?
so sometimes the conversations are like, well, I don't care, I just want to build more,
Okay.
right? Like, I don't care, I just want to sell more pens.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough, but you know that somewhere down the road, you're going to stop being able to sell because something's going to happen where you're going to look at that. Oftentimes, it's like, that's really interesting, can you go back and get me more information on that thing?
Okay.
Or it's, okay, so how do we respond to this? If we think the market is going this way, what's our response?
So it's more of a positioning, in that case, it's
Yeah.
more of a, where, you know, are we maintaining our position as a threat or is there a function, right? Okay,
Yeah.
let's see what's going on.
And often it's like, you'll do this in response to something.
Okay.
So you may be doing it all the time anyway, but you also may choose to do it in response to, so they've launched that new product and it seems super bizarre that like McDonald's is making pens all of a sudden.
Okay.
Why is McDonald's making pens? And then you may want to go back and backfill and see where they're headed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of compiling this data, are you looking backwards as you're doing this, or this is only a forward-looking analysis, like from time now, I start gathering?
It depends solely on your organization. In this case, we would have looked backwards.
Okay, and so the follow-on question to that is how do you sort of control for the bias? In other words, if I have a particular thesis about
Yeah.
the company already, and obviously this has got to be a subset of what you must have a massive
Yes.
database. So how are you controlling for the biases as you work backwards?
So a couple different ways to control for biases is to have the data points come from a machine. Have different team members, so the biases will be different team members across different generations, ethnic backgrounds, and even departments. And this is where that collaborative intelligence thing comes in, right? So as a marketer, I may think that fruit and yogurt parfait is like the pivotal event, but somebody from my R&D may be like, no, it's not really, because they were already doing, you know, this or this or this. So it's really getting a holistic view from the organization will help limit those biases. You're going to have them, and there's going to be blind spots as well.
So it's important to take this approach and vet it almost.
Absolutely. No CI person ever wants to stand alone. It's hard enough to be the one up there being like, here's what's going to happen with your company. You want to do something about this, and they're going to be like, yeah, you're like the hired help, and I don't need to listen to you. Right? But the more you can get a collaborative approach, and the more you can engender trust by having those weekly conversations with people around the office in different departments, the more you're going to be able to position these things as a collaborative effort that really is hopefully without biases and actually be taken seriously. I think we're like running out of time here, so I'm going to breeze through the end of this. How you communicate is as important as what you communicate. So think about handing somebody this versus handing them 10 years worth of media releases or media related to socially green and conscious efforts, which traditionally would have happened, right? You would have handed maybe somebody a binder that was like, here's a tab for McDonald's, a tab for Dunkin', and a tab for Starbucks of everything they've done in the last 10 years. That's great.
Good read.
That's a lot more helpful, right? And create a series of products where you can communicate this stuff. By doing this, you'll take yourself from sort of being just sort of a researcher adding background to your products to becoming a trusted advisor, which is everybody's kind of, that's where you want to go. You don't want to be the firefighter who's putting out fires. Like, why did this happen? You want to be the person who's saying, we're going to get past why it happens and look forward, do forward thinking. This is more for somebody who's actually doing CI on a full-time basis, but you can start to think about how you would, in your own organizations and your own rules, move from being able to just do the first column to all the way to the trusted advisor column. And what, it may not be that you do all of an entire column, but you get there slowly. Ethics. Here's my little comments about ethics. It is an entirely honest and ethical practice. I work for lawyers. They would not let me do anything illegal. In fact, any of you who work with your own legal departments know that they're really difficult people to work with. Or they can be really difficult people to work with because everything is a liability, right? If you wouldn't be comfortable with what you're doing as the headline of the newspaper, don't do it. So don't walk the halls where you know your competitor's sales meeting is if you don't want to get caught. Don't pay somebody to do it for you if you don't want to get caught. These are all sort of the urban legends that are out there about the way CI gets done.
It happens.
It does happen, absolutely. People go through other people's garbage. Is it unethical? No. Is it gross? Yes. Do I want to be caught doing it? No. Always discuss anything you're going to do before you do it. Never make a phone call to a competitor and say, hi, I'm calling from lie number 1 about lie number 2. Like, never do stuff like that. There are companies you can hire to do those things for you who won't do it unethically, is my point. They will call and say, I'm doing research on behalf of this organization. I can't divulge my client, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to answer some questions. And people will answer the questions. So there are ways, don't do anything that is unethical. If we go back to the original SCIP definition of what is CI, the first thing they say is that it is an ethical practice of blah, 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 blah. I don't want to belabor this. Yeah.
Hi, guys. Why is calling a company and asking them for information, posing as somebody else, posing as a potential customer, unethical? I mean, I think that's equivalent to going on, say, their website and learning about their products.
I think lying about who you are is unethical.
Is it?
I think so.
To me, it's posing as, okay, I guess.
Posing, I think, in and of itself, the word indicates that you are posing as somebody as opposed to being somebody. If you call them and say, hey, I'm calling from your competitor, do you want to tell me X, Y, and Z?
Is that different than going on their website and posing as a potential customer?
It's disclosed, right? On the website, you're anonymous. You're an IP address. They could find out who you, if they really wanted to, they could get back to your IP address. And then you've disclosed who you are. So I think it's that whole posing thing that's an issue, at least for me. Yeah.
Just a question on privacy. Do you find any of the new privacy laws in that are causing any hassle about gathering information and keeping it and storing? Like, you guys worry about that?
No, because we don't do anything to violate privacy laws up front. So I would never keep a list of people who attended a conference, for example, and then use that. Although what I will do is put in a database that I spoke to this person on this date at this time, and here's what they said.
But isn't that starting to capture information that, say, for example, in Canada, the privacy commissioner thinks is actually private data, and you have to worry about it?
No, because there's no contact information. There's no, I'd have to look at PIPEDA specifically.
Yeah, I guess the reason I'm asking is because we're running into clients that are starting to ask us those questions.
Like, what are you
about
keeping
the work
it?
we do. Right?
Okay.
And I'm wondering if you're seeing any of that.
No, there is and with the new anti-spam laws and things like that, there you have to be really, really careful who people have to opt in rather than opt out, and so those sorts of things, but I haven't come across it as a CI issue yet.
Okay.
I say yet because
Who knows?
It's entirely possible.
Okay, thanks.
Have you found any particularly good or interesting techniques of getting pricing information on your competitors? That's always a favorite.
Yeah.
Which is ethical.
Which is ethical. So there's a few different ways you can go about doing it. Use your HR departments. They're hiring people from your competitors all the time. So,
Okay, so like talk to one
So-
of them and say,
yeah, as part of the inboarding process. So I wouldn't do it as part of the interview process until somebody is hired. But once they're hired, go and have coffee with them, or talk to your HR people and say, like, do you think this person would be amenable to talking to me about their experiences at your organization?
that's a good idea.
Talk to current clients who might be willing to share that information with you. Hey, did these people pitch to you? Maybe it's an info. So this is maybe where that privacy issue is going to become an issue. So people aren't going to disclose contents of a formal article, but there may be issues that are disclosed as part of an informal, I was playing golf with this guy the other day and he mentioned that they're selling paper for this and you're selling paper for that. What's the discrepancy? Brush up on your elicitation skills.
Just to add on that, what I used to do, and I did CI as a job years ago, and I built this relationship with the sales guys. Of course, you're doing win-loss, right? But everybody's worried about the loss part of the win-loss, but the win is like when you just got the deal, the customer is often really willing to talk about what the pricing was on the other guy's side, because they've got that honeymoon glow, and they're like, oh yeah, that guy was so brutal because the pricing was blah, 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 and you learn a lot that way.
Yeah, and if you lose too, it's a great thing to go back to the client. If you can work in the debrief post RFP, it's really thank you for bringing that up.
Just from a perspective of pricing, when you lost, they don't tend to go to the pricing, but when they won, they tend to be a little sort of.
I actually find in our business they'll tell us that we've lost based on pricing often. And we'll often find out that competitors have underbid us either by bidding zero on a deal and they're willing to do it as a loss leader to get the client. I don't know if we can't compete, so, and you wouldn't have known that going in. Yeah.
How often you can just approach them with trade shows? As in fact, I've had them never inquire, sometimes they won't want to know who you are until they have had a discussion. And just to get an idea of something within range, they'll tell you what the price is.
Right. And that is absolutely totally legit. If they were to ask you who you are, that's when you maybe don't want to say who, you don't want to make up a lie. Be like, oh, I'm here from wherever. I mean, they know. There's a whole theory of trade show CI, and Jonathan Kaloff is a professor at the University of Ottawa. He talked to you all about trade show CI. He's written a book on trade show CI and how to go around and elicit this kind of information. And often you're right, you don't have to disclose who you are, you just kind of show up and say, hey, I'm here. And the stuff is out there on the floors too, right? Often, so not literally the floor, but on the trade show floor.
Mm-hmm.
So just maybe the last point about urban legends, was there something you were gonna
Oh,
talk about there?
we've talked about there's the stories of people hiring hotel staff to go around and clean up the rooms for anything that's been left behind at trade show meetings. There's a whole slew of nefarious bad.
So you're in the competitive intelligence community. Have you heard of that from any colleagues?
I've heard of some colleagues doing some pretty crazy things, but it's all been legit. It's just really, you do that? You do that in the name of finding that little piece of information. But yeah, people do some crazy stuff. But it's all on the up and up. It's all totally, the guy who works at Dunkin', he didn't, but he had field people who would go into Dunkin' Donut branches and watch what people are doing and take pictures and send it back and be like, we need to make a donut that you can actually dip in your coffee because here's this trend of people dipping donuts in their coffee, whatever. Promise we're near the end. So professional associations and resources, so there's SCIP, as I talked about, which is the Strategic and Competitive Intelligence Professionals. Again, I am, in the interest of full disclosure, I am on the board of SCIP. SCIP is an international organization. And I mentioned that I was presenting here tonight, and they're willing to offer anybody who's here or anybody in your organization a reduced fee to join the organization if it's of interest to you. They do an annual conference in May, and I can give you more information. SLA-CID, which is the Special Libraries Association Competitive Intelligence Division. So I know that sounds totally weird, but librarians are great researchers. If you have librarians in your organizations, or you have business analysts, financial analysts who have library background research skills, use them, tag them, bring them into your fold, make friends with them. The Intel Collab is an online, and I believe it's www.intelcollab.com, but again, I'm available. And they run webinars on a monthly basis, depending on they're free to anyone, and they're on various topics related to CI. ICI is the Institute for Competitive Intelligence, and they do certification. Company software, so Aurora WDC is an organization out of Madison, Wisconsin. They consult, they also have a great software platform. I use their software platform. Digimind is out of Boston. They also do social media monitoring, have a software platform. I can, if anybody's interested, I can give you the lowdown on a bunch of the stuff. InfoEngine, same thing. Cascade Insights, they do a great session on going beyond Google and how to do internet searching for various things. Fletcher CSI, these are some of the big CI names that you'll hear about. So what's next? Start simple with competitor profiles or product profiles. Build your internal network, I can't stress that enough. Collect data and prepare a reporting schedule. I should say A, not N, sorry. Engender trust and use it for good. Don't be evil with the trust that you engender within your organizations by both your internal audience and your external audience, as we talked about 22 slides ago. Don't collect data for data's sake, to your earlier point about what do I do with it. Engage the human element and make sure it passes the so what test, and that not only does it pass the so what test, but you can wrap that and give it to somebody in a way that is decision ready or actionable. Thank you.
TPMA would like to thank its sponsors, 280 Group, Pragmatic Marketing, BlackBerry, ADP, MyAxe, Hirefully, and Wild Apricot.
Our podcast music is influenced by Probos. Available at indiefeed.com. Digital voices by iSpeech.org and neospeech.com. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to join us again next month for another exciting TPMA Talks podcast. Goodbye.